Welcome back to Alien Love Stories, where one kiss can rewrite reality and love isn't just complicated, it's quantum. In tonight's story, I found out my alien boyfriend had 5 hearts. The twist? They all wanted me at the same time. It was supposed to be a perfect moment, the kind you'd frame in your memory and label with soft piano music and ambient starlight. We were standing on the observation deck of the old satellite tower near the outskirts of Zone 9. Just outside Earth's orbit. Beneath us, the blue curve of Earth. Above us, meteor showers streaking like divine punctuation. And between us, electricity. The kind that doesn't need wires. His name was Kaelen, my boyfriend. Alien species classified, technically exiled royalty from a fractured time faction. Emotionally, a bit broken. Physically, somewhere between ancient Greek statue and awkward starlight jellyfish. But he smiled like no one else in the galaxy. "I've never seen Earth from here before," he said, voice low, almost like a melody tuned for me only. I leaned in. "You've seen every corner of the galaxy and never stopped to look back?" "I only look where I care. Tonight, I care here." Yeah, I melted a little. And then he kissed me, right there. Between shooting stars and recycled oxygen. It was warm, fierce, and just when I thought it couldn't get more cinematic, his body flickered, like a pixel glitch in an old video game. 1 second, Kaelen. Next second, a blink of 5 overlapping shadows, all shaped like him, all vibrating at different emotional frequencies. I pulled back. "Did you just vibrate in love?" He blinked, tried to speak. But then, flash. A pulse of light exploded outward, soft but sharp, like a thunderclap wrapped in silk. The deck shuddered. My hair flew up. Alarms blinked once, then died. And standing around me, 5 Kaelens, identical, yet immediately, unmistakably not. One step forward, eyes soft, smile warm, hands clasped nervously. "You okay?" I'm the part of him that worries, that wants to hold you when you have bad dreams. Second one adjusted a non-existent collar, stood tall, eyes sharp like calculus in motion. Logically, this anomaly fractured Kaelen's emotional spectrum. "We've been disassembled based on psychological archetypes." He turned to me. "But I'll be the one who keeps you safe. I know how to plan for everything." Third one, hair tousled, grinning like a comet on espresso. "She doesn't want spreadsheets, brain boy. She wants passion. I'm the spark, the thrill, the side of Kaelen that steals spaceships for weekend joyrides and kisses with too much tongue." He winked. I blushed. Why did I blush? Fourth one stood with arms crossed. Didn't speak at first, but his eyes, they scanned me like I was a threat. Or worse, like he was the threat. "Don't fall for this," he muttered. "None of this is real. You'll leave. You always leave. I'm the part of him that remembers what loss feels like." And then, the fifth one, leaning against the railing, looking at the stars, not even glancing my way. He didn't speak right away. But when he did, I'm what he hides. The wild, the chaotic, the part of him that wants freedom so badly he's scared of you. But he still showed up tonight. I stood frozen, mouth half open, sweat. Confusion. Maybe a little excitement I'm not proud of. "Okay," I said, clapping my hands once. "Let me get this straight. Kaelen, glitched. And now I have 5 versions of him?" The logical one nodded. "Each of us represents a dominant emotional drive. We've manifested independently due to an error in his quantum cohesion core, likely triggered by the intensity of your romantic input." "Romantic input?" The romantic one stepped forward. The kiss, it was too real, too honest. It made him split. I turned to them. "Where's the original Kaelen?" They all pointed to themselves, simultaneously. I sighed, hard. Of course, why make dating simple when you can add quantum heartbreak to the mix? The passionate one grinned. "Still think I'm the fun one?" The quiet wild one raised an eyebrow. "She's overwhelmed. Back off." The logical one snapped, "Statistically, I offer her the most sustainable future." The anxious protector said, "She just needs a hug." The doubtful one said nothing, but his eyes begged me not to choose, because choosing meant losing 4 parts of the person I loved. Then they all said in perfect unison, "I love you." And I just stood there, watching 5 versions of the same boy, all broken off from one impossible, beautiful, glitching heart. Let's get one thing clear. I was not ready for 5 versions of Kaelen. I mean, one Kaelen was already hard enough to emotionally digest. Now I had a romantic, a protector, a logic core, a wild card, and a suspicious ball of unresolved trauma. They decided to have a house meeting at my apartment because apparently when you glitch into 5, you also assume you're allowed to split the rent by emotional category. The logical Kaelen took charge. Obviously, he projected a 3D color-coded calendar into the air. We must create a time-sharing agreement. Each version will be allotted a personal interaction window with the host, meaning you, to establish relational dynamics and determine emotional compatibility. I have a name, I muttered. Yes, that too. The romantic one raised his hand like a sweet, polite thunderstorm. Can mine be sunset time? I already bought candles, and I wrote 17 haikus about the curve of your left earlobe. The protector stood up. Sunset is statistically less safe. Let me take the sunrise slot. Morning walks, security check-ins, vitamin D. You deserve safety and serotonin. The wild one threw a pillow at both of them. You're both boring. I call midnight. Stars, fire escapes, rooftop screaming. Let's get weird. Maybe tattoos. The doubtful one sat silently until I asked, "Do you want a time slot too?" He shrugged. "I don't know. You'll probably forget me. I'm not the version people stay with." Oof, the emotional damage radiated off him like cold rain. "Okay," I said, clapping once. "Let's do this. 5 time slots, 5 Kaelens, one girl who is both honored and mildly terrified. Round 1, sunrise with the protector." He showed up at 6 a.m. sharp, wearing tactical boots and holding a smoothie labeled Nutritional Optimal. "I've scouted your route to work. I've updated your pepper spray, and I packed you extra snacks." He was comforting. The way he walked on the street side of the sidewalk, the way he opened doors and waited for confirmation before stepping inside, but also a little much. I didn't need a bodyguard. I needed someone to see me, not just shield me. Still, he gave me a forehead kiss before leaving and whispered, "Call me if your soul needs armor." Round 2, lunch with logic. At exactly 12:30 p.m., the logic Kaelen arrived at my favorite cafe, which he had already optimized with a noise-dampening field and filtered water molecules. I took the liberty of reviewing your past conversations. I believe discussing the concept of emotional recursion would deepen our bond. He handed me a flowchart titled, "Feelings I Feel About Feeling You." It had footnotes and pie charts, literal ones. He ordered pie for data metaphor synergy. It was oddly endearing, but also clinical. At one point, I leaned in and whispered, "Can I kiss you?" He paused, calculated, then said, "Yes, but be advised, my molecules are still stabilizing." We kissed anyway. He hummed softly. I think that meant approval. Round 3, golden hour with romance. He met me in the park, carrying a guitar made of recycled stardust and shame. He didn't play it, just held it. "Too many words ruin the quiet," he said. He brought me flowers, spoke to squirrels like they were old friends, wrote a poem on my wrist with his finger. He cried during a pigeon's sunset. I nearly did too. He told me, "I don't want to win, I just want to be where your breath slows." Honestly, it ruined me a little, in a good way. Round 4, midnight with Wild. He showed up shirtless. Of course, with glowing tattoos that moved depending on his mood. "I stole a space motorbike. Want to ride it blindfolded while drinking strawberry soda and shouting poetry into the void?" We did none of those things. Instead, we broke into the abandoned observatory and screamed our favorite fears into the Echo Dome. Then he kissed me, hard, reckless, like he didn't care what came after. But as we sat there quiet at last, he whispered, "I'm the most dangerous because I love you with fire, and fire doesn't care who it burns." Round 5, silence with doubt. He didn't show up at first. I found him 2 blocks away, sitting on a bench. You should go to one of the others. They're more sure. I sat beside him, didn't speak. After a while, he said, I'm scared that if I get chosen, I'll disappoint you. And if I don't, I'll vanish and you won't even notice. I reached for his hand. I notice. I see you. He didn't smile, but he didn't cry either. He just let me hold his hand for a while. By the end of the day, I was emotionally full and empty and confused and alive. Because the truth was, I loved all of them, and none of them were enough. Because he, the real Kaelen, was the blend, the mess, the contradiction, the in-between. And I was falling for that. The man who cried and calculated, who doubted and dared, who protected and provoked. I just didn't know if I'd ever get him back. There was a timer in my bedroom. That wasn't there before. It floated 6 inches above my pillow, silent, glowing, and unmistakably alien. I woke up and there it was, hovering like a gentle threat. 71, 59, 54. I blinked, sat up. The numbers kept counting. What the hell, I whispered. Then the voice came, soft, robotic, vaguely amused. Quantum cohesion timer initiated. Merge event in T-minus 72 hours. I stared at it. My mouth was dry. I didn't remember drinking anything last night, or eating, or breathing apparently. Because how could I? My brain was too busy replaying the fact that yesterday I went on 5 completely different dates. With 5 completely different versions of the same person. Kaelen had glitched. He'd fractured. I had kissed him, and he exploded into emotional archetypes like a sci-fi therapy session. And now, I had 72 hours before 4 of them would vanish forever. Failure to select a primary host will result in automatic systemic prioritization, the voice added. Translation, if I didn't choose which version got to live, the universe would choose for me. I hated the universe sometimes. I got out of bed. The house was quiet, too quiet. They had agreed, all 5, to give me processing space, which I thought meant maybe a day or 2. Apparently, they interpreted it as 12 hours of absolute radio silence and hiding in different corners of the city like emotionally volatile Easter eggs. The romantic one had gone to the old garden district last I heard, said the roses whispered things about me when he touched them. The logic one was updating his firmware in a quiet tech vault under the library. The protector was at the gym. Of course, the wild one was probably streaking across the sky in a stolen speeder. And the doubtful one? No clue. He had disappeared again. Left me a note that just said, "You don't owe me anything, but I hope you'll remember me." Of course I remembered him. How could I forget the version of Kaelen that looked at me like I was sunlight wrapped in risk? I walked to the kitchen, made tea, tried to pretend this was a normal Tuesday. But the timer followed me, floating gently. Tick, tick, tick. Always counting down. 71 hours. I couldn't do this. I needed to talk to someone. So I did what any woman would do when faced with multiversal heartbreak, systemic countdowns, and emotional fragmentation. I called my best friend. Okay, she said 10 minutes later, sipping coffee on my couch. Let me get this straight. Your boyfriend glitched, split into 5. Each one is emotionally unique. You dated all of them, and now you have to pick which one survives? I nodded. She blinked. That's hot and horrifying. Accurate. She leaned forward. Do you want to choose? I stared at the tea in my hands. I don't know. I thought I wanted Kaelen, one person, not 5 pieces. But now, each of them feels real. And worse, they feel incomplete without each other. She raised an eyebrow. So pick the one that feels most like home. They all feel like home, I whispered. She frowned. That's a problem. I stood, paced. The timer floated behind me like an anxious puppy. How do you choose which part of someone is most real? How do you say yes to love when that yes means no to everything else they could have been? She was quiet for a long moment, then said, You don't choose which part of them you love. You choose whether you can love them as they are. But right now they're not whole, and that's not your fault. I sank onto the floor. My head throbbed. The doorbell rang. I looked up. then looked at the clock. 71 hours, 4 minutes, 31 seconds. Of course, one of them had come back. I opened the door. It was the romantic one. He was holding a single flower and a raincoat. "It might drizzle later," he said. "I remembered your hair gets stubborn when it's damp." I took the flower, smiled. "You're early." I couldn't stay away. He didn't push, just stepped inside quietly. "Let me lead." We sat on the couch. The timer floated between us like an awkward chaperone. "I know about the countdown," he said softly. "We all do." "Do you care?" He looked down. "I care too much. That's my problem. I'm the part of Kaelen that believes love should hurt a little, that every heartbeat must be earned." I frowned. "That's not love, that's fear dressed in poetry." He smiled sad. "Exactly." He reached into his jacket, handed me a small book. "I wrote these last night. If I disappear, I want you to keep them." I opened it. Haikus, short verses, all about me. My laugh, my sighs, my inability to eat noodles neatly. He kissed my forehead, then stood. "I'll be outside if you want me." He left. I held the book. My chest ached, and the timer ticked on. Later that day, the logic one showed up. He brought charts. He brought backup drives. He brought tea, the exact temperature I liked. "I've run simulations," he said. "There is no outcome where all 5 remain. The system's convergence protocol is absolute." I nodded. I thought as much. "But," he added, "I ran another simulation. Of you, alone, after choosing me, or another, and in 74% of outcomes, you regret it." I blinked. "What about the other 26? "You spend your life convincing yourself it was the right choice." I stared at him. He stared back, then added softer. "I'm the part of him that tries to be enough, but knows logic isn't love. It's just how we survive it." That night, the wild one climbed through my window. Literally. "Doors are boring," he grinned. He sat on the floor, took off his boots. "Come with me," he said. "Let's run. Let the universe collapse. Let the timer die. Let's burn just once." "I can't." He looked at me, eyes glowing. "Why not?" "Because I want more than fire." He nodded, kissed me once, fierce, then vanished through the window. No footsteps, no goodbye, just silence, and the timer, still counting. I didn't sleep. I waited for the protector. He arrived just before dawn, brought breakfast, sat on the porch with me, didn't speak for a long time, then finally said, "I'd rather be erased than see you hurt, but if I'm the one who survives, I promise to protect your heart even from me." I touched his hand. He didn't flinch. The sun rose, and the timer blinked. 70,000. The doubt version never came. Not yet, but I felt him. Every moment, in every choice I hadn't made. The countdown changed color. That's the first thing I noticed. It had always been a soft white glow, neutral, clinical, like a doctor's clipboard. But now, it burned red. Red like warning signs, red like endings. T24A voice echoed through my apartment. Not like the others, not robotic, not cold. This one was final. Host has not selected a primary core. Randomized reduction protocol will initiate at 0 mark. 4 units will be terminated. Merge lock irreversible. I stared at the timer. My chest felt like someone had opened a zipper across my ribs. I hadn't eaten, hadn't slept. I didn't know how to. Not when every version of Kaelen kept showing up and giving me reasons to love them. And reasons I couldn't possibly choose only one. What if I picked the wrong one? What if the one I didn't pick was the one I'd truly grow old with? What if I never got the original back? What if I'd already lost him? I was sitting on the floor, head between my knees, when I felt a shift in the air. A presence. Quiet, almost afraid to exist. I looked up. He stood in the corner of the room. The one who never spoke, never demanded, never asked to be loved. Kaelen, the doubt, was watching me. I blinked. "You came." He stepped forward slowly, like he thought I'd vanish if he moved too fast. "I never left," he said. I swallowed. "You just didn't want to be seen." He nodded. "That's what I do. I'm the part of him that expects to be forgotten, that assumes affection is temporary, that plans for goodbyes before anyone says hello. I stood. My hands trembled. But you came anyway. His eyes searched mine. I didn't come to be chosen, he whispered. I know. I came because I found a way. I froze. A way to stop the deletion? He nodded. But it's not easy, and it's not fair, and it might hurt you. I laughed once, dry and broken. That's basically your entire brand, isn't it? He smiled, just a little. It almost broke me. Tell me, I said. He stepped closer, close enough to feel his pulse, if he had one. There's a failsafe, he whispered, a manual override, a loophole buried in the merge code. But to access it, one core must be rejected. I frowned. What do you mean? He looked down. One of us must be chosen first, not to survive, but to be told, I do not love you. I stepped back. No. It has to be me, he said. No. It's the only way to trick the system into instability, to collapse the prioritization matrix. Then you'll have access to full integration, not deletion. We can become one again, not in pieces, not in fragments. You're asking me to reject you? He nodded. My throat burned. He was the version that didn't ask for anything, and now he was asking for the thing that would destroy him. He placed his hand on my cheek. I'm already the one you hesitate with. I'm the silence between your sentences. The pause after you say, I love you. I'm what he buried deepest. That's not true. But it is. He smiled, soft and cracked. And that's okay. I was crying now, not loudly, just salt and ache leaking out of my eyes. He stepped back. I need you to say it. I shook my head. I can't. You have to. 23:46:12. I closed my eyes, tried to breathe, tried to imagine a world without him, the version of Kaelen that hurt, that doubted, that feared rejection so much he carved himself out of his own heart. I looked up and said with every bone in my body breaking, I don't love you. The moment hung like frost in the air. He blinked, once, twice, then smiled. I know. And then he exploded into light, not shattered, not erased, just absorbed, like rain sinking into the soil. And the timer, it flickered. T error, null override. Detected recalculating, new path available. Integration mode, unified core, rebuild enabled. I collapsed, literally, fell to my knees. The room was spinning. And then the door burst open. 4 Kaelens, each running, each glowing, each screaming something different. What did you do? Where is he? Did the timer start merge? Are you okay? I looked at them, tears running down my cheeks. He saved you. They froze. He sacrificed himself, gave me the key. I rejected him so the system would glitch. And now you have a choice. The logic Kaelen blinked. Wait, are you saying we can merge voluntarily? The romantic one gasped. The override, the protector stepped forward. But that means, the wild one whispered, we won't be the same after. We'll lose the lines. I nodded. But you'll be whole. Silence. They looked at each other, looked at me. Then the protector stepped forward. I trust her. The romantic nodded. I want to be everything she needs, not just a part. The logic Kaelen said nothing, but pressed a finger to the center of his chest, and his body began to glow. One by one, they began to shimmer, merge, fade into one another, each light swirling into a new shape, until there was just one, just him, Kaelen, the real one. Not perfect, not fragmented, but whole. He looked at me, tears in his eyes, and said, I remember everything. I stepped forward. Even the rejection? He nodded. Especially that. He reached out, pulled me close, held me like gravity meant nothing. I'm not 5 anymore, he whispered. I smiled into his shoulder. Number, but you're still mine. You'd think that after the universe bends itself backwards to recombine your fragmented alien boyfriend into a single coherent person again, things would get easier. Spoiler alert, they don't. Not right away. Not when the new version of him wakes up in your bed, breathing like he just swam through every emotion in existence. Not when he looks at you, truly looks at you, and his eyes say, I remember it all. Because now he isn't one piece. He's all five. And something else. Something new. The first morning after the merge was soft. Kaelen made breakfast, or tried to. 3 eggs were cracked too hard, the toast caught fire, and the orange juice levitated before exploding mid-pour. Guess the logic and wild sides are still arguing, he muttered, wiping juice from his forehead. I laughed, pulled him close. I missed you, I whispered. He froze, held me tighter. I missed me too. But later that day, things changed. We were sitting on the balcony, watching clouds spiral across the upper layers of the atmosphere, a leftover quirk from when the Protector version accidentally reprogrammed the weather drones to emotionally interpretive sky patterns. Kaelen went quiet, too quiet. Then he whispered, Something's wrong. I sat up. What do you mean? There's a memory. I didn't have it before. It came with the merge. I took his hand. What kind of memory? He stared into the clouds. We were sitting in this exact spot. You had just made tea. I was wearing a red hoodie. You looked at me and said, I think it's time. And then you left. My heart skipped. I never said that. Not yet, but I saw it, felt it, like a scar from a future that hasn't happened. Time scar. That's what Zyrella once called it. When an emotional imprint leaks backward through quantum entanglement. A residue from timelines that brushed too close. Kaelen wasn't just remembering, he was remembering forward. You think we're going to break up, I whispered. He didn't answer, didn't have to. His silence was shaped like goodbye. But why? I asked. Why would I leave you? He turned to me, eyes raw. I don't know. That's what's killing me. It wasn't anger or betrayal. It was acceptance. Like you'd made peace with it. Like you believed we were done. I couldn't breathe. I wanted to laugh, to tell him he was overreacting. That time was a liar and emotions weren't facts. But instead I reached out, touched his face. Do you still want this? He didn't blink. More than anything. Then we fight it. Whatever that future is, we change it. He nodded slowly, but his hand trembled when he held mine. That night he couldn't sleep. I found him sitting at the kitchen table, drawing something on a napkin. When I looked closer, I saw it was a timeline. 5 branches, all leading to the same point. Marked with one word, separation. I sat beside him, watched. He whispered, maybe I'm not supposed to have you forever. I bit my lip. Or maybe we're supposed to write a new version of forever. He looked up, and for the first time, there was hope. Small, but real. In the following days, he started doing something strange. He began recording messages to himself, to the future. Note to self, if she starts pulling away, don't assume it's over. Ask her, be brave. Reminder, you're allowed to be soft. She doesn't need a hero, she needs you. And if she ever says it's time, ask her what she means before walking away. He cataloged these notes, stored them in a small drive embedded in his wrist, said he was building a failsafe, a way to preserve what mattered if the worst came to pass. I told him he was paranoid. He said he was prepared. I didn't know who to believe. But then something happened. We went back to the balcony. Same spot, same sky, same quiet. And he turned to me, eyes wide. This is it. What? This is the moment. I froze. No. I recognize it. You're wearing the same shirt. The clouds look the same. You'll go inside in 10 seconds to get tea. I stood. I'm not leaving. He stood too. You did last time. I grabbed his hand. I'm not that version of me, and you're not just a collection of glitches anymore. We choose this, right now. He blinked. The timeline in his wrist flickered, paused, recalculated. New path. Open. I kissed him. Hard, messy, real. And for the first time in days, he didn't tremble. That night, he deleted the drive. Every note, every warning, every what if, because he finally believed in now. There are no warnings when the stars decide to rewrite you. No sirens, no countdowns, just silence. And then suddenly, he's not him anymore. It happened on a Tuesday, which felt rude. If something was going to erase the heart of the person I loved, it should at least have the decency to do it on a Friday. We were at the market, browsing fruit. He was arguing with a vendor about the flavor profile of Martian oranges versus Venus-grown sour bulbs. Something about acidic empathy fields and tongue texture. I was laughing, not because I understood, but because he did, with such reckless conviction that it made the whole world feel deliberate. And then he stopped mid-sentence, turned to me, and blinked. Not in the "I forgot what I was saying" way, but in the "who are you and why are you standing in my memory" way. I reached for him. "Kaelen?" He stepped back, frowned. "I'm sorry, I think you're mistaken. Do we know each other?" I froze. The market blurred. The fruit, the people, the sounds, gone. All I saw was his face, empty, too clean, too quiet, like someone had erased the pages from the book and left the cover. He dropped the sour bulb he was holding. It rolled into the street. My heart did the same. Later we learned the cause. A ripple event, stellar mindfold echo they called it, triggered by a rare supernova reflecting off a gravity mirror orbiting the edge of the Earth Hill Nebula. Random, chaotic, and wildly unpredictable. It scanned for recent quantum instabilities and reset affected consciousnesses to their most statistically consistent versions. In short, he got reset. Kaelen 2.0, with the heart of the original, but none of the scars, none of the choices, none of me. He didn't know my name, didn't flinch when I whispered stories, didn't remember the time I wrapped us both in the same hoodie and we laughed for an hour about who was the armhole boss. He just smiled politely and said, "You seem kind," like I was a stranger who'd handed him a nice cup of tea. I tried everything, old pictures, shared playlists, the mug he'd chipped and refused to replace because imperfection is charming. He held it, looked at it, then said, "This is a very inefficient handle design." I shattered, quietly, in the kitchen, while he stared out the window at a bird like it might explain the universe to him. A week passed. I kept hoping something would spark, that he'd say my name in the dark by accident, that his hand would reach for mine before his brain could lie. But nothing. He was sweet, thoughtful, brilliant, but not mine. Not anymore. And then he asked me out, casually, like we hadn't already loved, like we hadn't broken, like we hadn't once stood on a rooftop and screamed our truce into the sky. "You seem fascinating," he said, "and there's a restaurant on Europa Station I've wanted to try. Would you like to go?" I stared at him, 1,000 memories in my chest, 1,000 cuts. This was the version of him who didn't carry the weight of us, and somehow that made him lighter, brighter, untouched. I wanted to say yes,